Thank you again, everyone, for coming. We're delighted that you're able to join us today. One more thing before we get started, I want to thank our host committee, which is a group of retirees who has been very helpful to me since I've started here 3 years ago, helping me learn the ways of extension, help me organize retiree events, and help me to think about philanthropy on behalf of MSU Extension. And those people are Henry Allen, Maggie Bethel, Tom Dudek, Bill and Mary Robb, and Mel Matchett. So special thanks to those folks who I think are all on today. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of MSU Extension, Dr. Jeff Dwyer. Jeff.
Thank you, Bridget, very much, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. For those of you that I have not met, I am Jeff Dwyer, and I have the privilege of being the Director of MSU Extension, following in the amazing footsteps of several people on our Zoom today. So I am grateful for the path that they carved out that we've been able, hopefully, to build upon in recent years, and I'm looking forward to talking a bit about that. So I know this is not how we usually do these retiree gatherings, but let me acknowledge that we're doing a lot of different things these days, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you in the next few minutes, and then we'll have a chance to hear from Patrick Cudney as well. So traditionally, we've held an annual retiree event at the Kettman Center, and I know that is on many of your minds. So I want to discuss that right off the bat, and I know we had a number of questions leading up to today about the Kettman Center. It is my understanding that the Kettman Center has been a major topic of conversation for the 4-H Foundation for a number of years. And let me address some of the recent questions that have come up. First of all, we were asked, what was MSU Extension's role in choosing recently to close the Kettman Center? Just so you know, as Extension Director, I'm a voting member of the Foundation Board, as is Dr. Jake DeDecker, the State 4-H Director. But this was a decision of the full board, which I believe now numbers 18 voting members. I believe the rules and policies allow for a greater number of members, but I believe there are 18 of them right now. It's also important to know that 2 years ago, the 4-H Foundation formed a task force to deep dive into the long-term viability of Kettman as part of an overall strategic planning process. The board did a lot of research, benchmarking, surveys, etc. And then we came across the coronavirus pandemic. And so while COVID-19 was not the start of the conversation about Kettman, it is true that it probably moved the timeline along more quickly than would otherwise have been true, in large part due to the loss of revenue for at least an entire year. One of the things we are grateful about is that 3 years ago, a decision was made to move 5 full-time 4-H Foundation employees to become MSU Extension employees as a cost-cutting measure for the 4-H Foundation. And we're grateful for that, in large part because without that change, all 5 of those individuals would be without jobs right now in a very difficult employment environment. So although there have been difficult choices in some areas, our outreach and engagement continues in a significant way, and I'm excited to tell you about some of that. It's built on a local basis thanks to the more than 600 faculty and staff working in all 83 counties. In fact, it's built on the basis, on the shoulders of all of you, and we're grateful for all that you've done to make that possible. We've done that as has been our history, mostly through in-person meetings, programs, and other events. But on March 16th here in Michigan, for those of you that are now out of state, that all changed. All of those staff were sent home, and all of them continued to serve our clients and customers, although in a very different way. Within 6 days of the initial stay home, stay safe executive order from Governor Whitmer, we launched the Remote Learning and Resources website, and our teams began modifying programming so that they could present it in a digital format that would provide equal educational value right in people's homes. This online space is a robust virtual one-stop shop for everything MSU Extension has to offer online. It houses educational resources meant to help parents keep their children on track while learning at home. An extensive list of online programs for adults, a calendar of virtual events, educational videos, relevant, responsive, and evidence-based articles authored by MSU Extension's vast network of experts, and resources for local governments and communities navigating the effects of the pandemic, and much, much more. I'm especially proud of the following. Pre-COVID-19, our MSU Extension website was visited by more than 1 million people each month, seeking one or more of the more than 30,000 pieces of evidence-based content that are available on a wide range of topics. Since April, our website has been visited by an average of more than 1.25 million people. So we've had an increase of more than 25% since the pandemic. Some real-time programming has attracted as many as 2,000 participants at one time, and many of our programs have reached thousands of participants, both real-time and in archived versions. Some of our early successes focused on helping families and communities transition to the new normal. A yoga class, for example, presented by Zoom that our staff thought maybe 20 people would tune into, turned into a co-presentation on Zoom and Facebook Live with roughly 500 people logged in each day for 26 days to learn to breathe and stretch as they adjusted to the new normal. Lunch and Learn lectures hosted by our equine educator gave youth a chance to learn more about horses. Though she planned on only offering one brief session to give young people something to do when schools were closed, her idea quickly gained steam. Thanks to popular demand, hundreds of youth expanded their knowledge of all things horses, related on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays over the course of 4 weeks. Our early efforts throughout the state were also focused on using our existing talent and resources to provide immediate assistance, including providing access to Zoom and meeting facilitation for local governments that were finding it difficult to convene online efficiently, collecting and donating N95 masks, face masks, and gloves, and other PPE wherever possible, and linking farmers to clinical mental health teletherapy services in collaboration with Pine Rest Mental Health Services as part of our growing emphasis on farm stress. Within a few days, we had our programming spooled up and ready to present digitally in a big way. Staff members quickly pivoted from face-to-face programming offered in a few locations to a series of one-hour presentations called Adulting 101. Topics included things such as what to look for when renting, tips and tricks for easy cooking, how to keep your finances in order, and the right way to do household tasks such as ironing and setting a table. This series alone attracted more than 3,000 participants and was frequently recommended by school districts along with their own online programming. Cabin fever presentations became a highly popular series of 11 webinars via Zoom and Facebook Live, designed to get people's minds off of being cooped up inside and to get them thinking about their garden spaces. Sessions focused on lighthearted but educational conversations about gardening, featuring guests who discuss topics like seed saving, houseplants, pollinator health, community gardening, and container gardening. The webinar's success with more than 500 attendees per session has prompted organizers to continue this programming through 2020. Our food safety experts launched the Think Food Safety social media campaign. This series reaches about 50,000 people per week with food safety videos and live virtual Q&A sessions for educators to answer food safety questions from the public. These sessions have attracted attendees from across the state and country, as well as internationally. In response to unprecedented disruptions to supply chains, limited employee availability, and increased human biosecurity needs, we also launched the MSU Extension's Rapid Response for Agriculture website. This site provides a single point of entry for farmers to access resources aimed at keeping staff safe and to learn how to best manage operations while still meeting consumer demands for fresh, safe for a fresh, safe food supply. MSU Extension educators are also assisting farmers through the growing season by meeting with them on virtual platforms, through online meetings and webinars, many of which are recorded so farmers can view the meetings in a time that is convenient for them, allowing greater access to MSU Extension programming than ever before. It is also important to point out that our educators are able to go on site and meet people in person under a thorough and very efficient process of requesting and gaining approval for travel waivers. This process has made it possible to address important needs while also adhering to all COVID-19 health and safety protocols. Our ag teams have also been working on COVID-19 hazard assessment and mitigation program we call CHAMP. This collaboration between MSU Extension and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services recognizes the need to support employees, employers, and businesses in agriculture as they adapt to COVID-19 requirements and take precautions that support workplace safety. Collaborators developed a robust tool that can be utilized to develop the different tasks to workplace safety, along with mitigation practices that address these risks. Aimed at reducing the risk of disease transmission in the agricultural workforce, this tool will help farms and businesses design a pandemic preparedness plan tailored to their specific operation. Perhaps one of our more publicized projects was converting our Food Processing and Innovation Center to a PPE and decontamination powerhouse. As you know, overloaded hospitals created an increased need for PPE. As shortages loomed, the ability to reuse these materials became increasingly valuable. On April 1st, FPIC began using our Marlin spiral oven to decontaminate N95 masks. This process is currently awaiting U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval and has been openly shared with other entities that wish to utilize it. The approval process with the FDA continues as recently as a phone call at 2 o'clock this afternoon. On the youth front, Michigan 4-Hers were rallied and began independently sewing homemade cloth face coverings and donating them to protect the public, essential workers, and members of the healthcare workforce. By mid-April, Michigan 4-H centralized these local efforts and created a goal to donate over 5,000 face coverings through the Michigan 4-H mask projects. We are also working closely with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Our district directors are very aware that success for businesses under the new normal necessitates access to PPE. Through their Pure Michigan Business Connect platform, MEDC is linking companies that need PPE with suppliers. We have been contacting businesses that have submitted their needs to help connect with suppliers, essentially helping them broker the deal. To date, we've communicated with more than 3,000 organizations across Michigan, from dental offices to libraries and every type in between. Many of our programs have actually grown substantially during the pandemic. Heroes to Hives, the largest veteran ag training program in the country, has this year nearly 1,000 veterans enrolled in the current online training experience. Learning online opportunities to reach important audiences while benefiting from in-person experiences where needed will be an important part of the future of MSU Extension. The last thing I want to mention this morning is local fairs. This afternoon. These annual events are often the lifeblood of communities throughout Michigan. When we made the difficult decision to modify, postpone, or cancel all in-person 4-H programming through September way back in March, we knew it would impact local fairs, most of which rely on 4-Hers for their exhibits and contests. We work closely with the Michigan Association of Exhibitions, and we did not take this decision lightly. Instead, under the direction of Dr. Jake DeDecker and many other outstanding staff and volunteers, we created the Michigan 4-H Virtual Showcase and Auctions. These online fair type experiences that allow them to showcase their mastery of skills they've learned through 4-H, receive constructive feedback, be recognized for their many accomplishments, and auction their still and static and market animal projects. More than 80 fairs have now canceled or significantly modified their in-person fair experience, And I'm very proud to say that about 75% of those fairs have adopted our online virtual showcase and auction framework. You can support these local auctions by bidding on projects or simply donating funding to 4-Hers. You can find an auction near you on the potential buyer area of our website, and Megan can share with you the URL in the chat to reach that site. An interesting note from all of this is that we are understandably being forced to work remotely and focus on online programming in a way that has given our staff an opportunity to do something that in some cases they've wanted to do for a long time. And that is to convert their predominantly in-person programming to a more digitally focused format so that they could reach more people. This doesn't mean that we will abandon face-to-face programming. That will never be our goal at MSU Extension. It does mean, however, that the MSU Extension that came into the coronavirus pandemic will not be the same MSU Extension that comes out of the pandemic. And we are working very hard to learn from the experience we've gained in recent years or recent months, and we'll continue to do that in the coming months. I'll use our ag educators and researchers as an example. They've been working with their partners in ag bio research to create virtual field days, a hallmark of what we typically do in person throughout the state in the summertime. Online attendance for these field days has exceeded so far the typical in-person attendance that we receive, and the feedback has been excellent. Finally, before I turn this over to Patrick, I also want to talk about another very important aspect of what we've been doing at MSU Extension in recent months. We've also been using this time and devoting a great deal of attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion. As racial tensions grew throughout the country in the last few months, we began a series of listening sessions that we still conduct weekly, which is an opportunity for our staff to talk about the tensions going on in the country, in our state, in their communities, and sometimes even among our colleagues, and so that they can help us to understand how to appreciate all that is going on and to learn from it so that we can do better in MSU Extension going forward. The injustices felt by our colleagues of color, frankly, are staggering, and the helplessness that we hear from our colleagues with white privilege are very clear. We can do better in MSU Extension, and we need to do better. Recently, we've also formed affinity groups based on ethnicity, which are helping us to facilitate additional discussions around equity and inclusion. Those groups are meeting weekly and will continue to meet weekly as long as we can foresee at this time. I think this is one of the important things that we're doing now in MSU Extension, and I can tell you it's been personally very important and educational for me. Finally, some of you have asked about our relationship with President Stanley. Let me say that he has been remarkable in the extent to which he has talked about MSU Extension, even from before he was full-time on campus about a year ago. And he's continued to talk about a great deal about MSU Extension and the role that we play around the state, but also on campus. It's also important to note, because I think it's a practical example of the support that we're getting from the president and previous provosts, and as of Monday of this week, our new provost, Teresa Woodruff, that earlier to travel waivers and the opportunity we've had to use travel waivers in a responsible way to get people out into the field when that is necessary. And I think it's important for you to know that because of the support of President Stanley and others, we, until very recently, were the only administrative unit within Michigan State University that was allowed to manage the travel waiver process on their own. Everyone else had to manage a portion of that process, but then eventually make its way to the provost for final approval. I think that has been a tremendous show of support for MSU Extension, and I give the full credit to our institute directors and our district directors for managing what I think has been both a responsible but also an efficient process that has allowed us to continue to manage this over the last 5 months. So now one of the great things about my being the director of MSU Extension is that I get to work with Patrick Cudney, and I'm pleased that you're going to have a chance to hear from him right now.
Well, thanks, Jeff. And he doesn't say that every day, folks, but I'm glad he said it today. So it is really, really fun for me to see everyone's faces. As always, I wish we could be together in person, but perhaps using this virtual opportunity, it's a chance for even more of us to gather without having the difficulty of traveling, and certainly in the environment that we're working in. As Jeff said, our staff have done amazing things with moving our content, our programs, our classes online. As administrators, we should be able to figure this out as adeptly as our program staff have. So I'm going to cover a few topics today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the budget. There's been some questions regarding retiree healthcare, and we've done a little bit of research to be able to answer those questions for you. And in fact, Megan, I think I'd like to start there with the retiree healthcare changes, and then I'll come back to the budget piece and today's elections that are going on and the impacts of those elections on our funding. So several of you have had questions about retiree healthcare. Changes that will begin on January 1st, 2021. Michigan State University will be changing retiree healthcare and prescription drug coverage plan options to Humana, a company called Humana. Our understanding is that this is very similar to what you now have and what you enjoy, and it should be a seamless process. Megan, can you share the link for where our retirees can get more information? We have a web link directly to Michigan State University Human Resources benefits site that has a link to healthcare and a document about Humana. So starting in September, this website will be live, and you can refer to the website for information about how to contact Humana directly with questions. So MSU Extension doesn't manage these benefits as an administrative unit. Certainly all the benefits and the retiree health benefits are managed through Human Resources centrally for Michigan State University. The best thing that we can do is provide that link to Humana for you as a resource for you to go with your questions. If at some point in the future you're having difficulty making a connection, having difficulty finding the site, please reach out to us and we'll do what we can to provide you the direct resource and connection with Central HR, and they can help connect you to Humana. So thank you for that question. I think that was asked 3 or 4 times in the pre-questions. And Megan will provide that link in the notes.
Yep, it's in the chat for everyone so that they can actually click on it and access the page.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. So next I want to come back to our budgets. And today there are 4 counties across the state of Michigan that are asking voters to help determine whether or not to fund MSU Extension at the local level. Wexford County, Alcona County, Iosco County governments are all requesting a renewal of their current millages during today's election in the August primary. The new county of the 4 that's up for a millage request is Clare County. And again, that's a first-time millage request that the Board of Commissioners have put in front of the voters of Clare County. We know that this will be a difficult election year, given the global pandemic, the impact on people's personal finances, and certainly the divisive politics. Not in my 24 years of working with county government and working in state and local government have I seen the divisiveness of politics that we are experiencing. Certainly at the federal level, we see it at the state level, and it is very much impacting programs and services at the local level. The millage trend is a trend that continues to grow in our state. In fact, we have 15 of our 83 counties that support their investment in MSU Extension through a voter-approved millage. We have had some millages that were not successful, some after multiple attempts. We've seen a marked level of success in working with local Friends of Extension groups to educate the public about how we use these limited tax dollars to support the partnership that is MSU Extension. We established something called the Millage Resource Team, where we're wrapping experienced district directors, state and local government experts. We get support from governmental affairs. We have a team that meets with district directors and local staff as we work through these really uncomfortable processes. We are optimistic about today's results. Jeff is always very optimistic about today's results and always our millage results. I'm a little more pragmatic, so we plan for what's next. And what's next is this evening, we'll be having an open Zoom meeting for all of our staff and district directors in those 4 counties, just to be there with them. We're all in this together. Tomorrow morning, we'll be having individual county staff team meetings via Zoom with myself and our district director, and we'll talk to the counties about, okay, what's next? Hopefully we'll be celebrating the success in these 4 counties, but if not, we'll talk about those next steps. Those next steps are not determined by us as an organization. As you all well know, Extension is a partnership. The decisions to ask for millages are not ours. We cannot advocate. We can educate, we can't advocate. So our local boards of commissioners will be forced with making that next decision about how to invest in the partnership that is MSU Extension. Our overall budget picture, I think it's important that you all see that we're a $93 million plus organization in our last full fiscal year. About 4 years ago, for the first time ever, our grants and contracts line usurped our state funding appropriation for the first time in the history of Extension. And that's a trend, and certainly under prior leaders. Tom started this, Maggie certainly continued it, and Jeff has taken us to new levels in terms of our exploration and expectation of our staff and faculty to be grant active and entrepreneurial. Now you can see a full almost 38% of our $93 million budget is supported through grants, contracts, service agreements. About 32% is our state appropriation, about $30 million, just under $30 million last fiscal year that the state of Michigan provides in support of Extension. It took us a long time to recoup the 15% state budget cut that we experienced. Again, Tom would remember this really well, so would Steve. It's taken us a long time to get back to where we were, but that's not an apples to apples comparison. Of course, the cost of fringe benefits go up, cost of operating goes up, but we have had some success and growth in our state funding partner, especially with new initiatives. In fact, you might find it interesting that even with the state budget challenges that are going on, the state of Michigan and the legislature and governor is supporting an additional $500,000 allocation to Extension focused on our farm stress work. That's pretty exciting. It's unique. It shows the bipartisan support that our organization continues to enjoy. Our county investments, we're proud of the growth. The last 4 years, our county investments have increased over 21%. We have a signed agreement with all 83 counties in Michigan. There are 3 counties that do not financially contribute to the partnership that is Extension in cash investments, but other partners have stepped up. School districts, community colleges. We very much support and work with our traditional core partner, which is county government, but we also understand they're not our only partner. So in those 3 counties that don't currently contribute financially, we have a strategy because elections are every 2 years with county boards of commissioners, and we continue to demonstrate the important work that takes place from Extension in those communities and continue to grow our programming to the best of our abilities in partnership with other entities that value the work that our staff do in service to the residents of those counties. So overall, between 2014 and 2019, our budgets increased about 24%. Certainly the economic recovery in the state, the economic recovery nationally, we've benefited from that, but our growth has been substantial, and we have significantly diversified our funding portfolio, and you see that represented in front of you today on the pie chart. A couple of questions that I think are related. There was a question about long-term stability of MSU Extension given today's budget problems. So that's a great question, and I'll answer that by restating that the diversification of our funding portfolio will help us. It absolutely will help us. We're also being very creative in supporting our staff to work remotely, work from home in an environment where they can do work to the best of their abilities with their own constraints of working from home and taking care of their loved ones, or if they happen to live by themselves, taking care of their own social emotional health. We are continuing ever since the pandemic started to support our staff to work remotely. Our district directors are working very hard at soft office re-entry processes in coordination and collaboration with our county government partners. So the long-term stability of Extension, I still haven't found that crystal ball that was supposed to come with the job when I was offered it, Maggie. But I would say that our diversity of our portfolio is important and it will help us. And we have been doing very active planning to be able to deal with the budget ramifications that ultimately all publicly funded entities will have to deal with. The really good news, if you haven't heard, in the current fiscal year, the governor and the legislature, using federal CARES Act funding, was able to hold higher education and public education harmless. So we did not have to make adjustments and return current fiscal year resources. We are certainly doing preparation and planning for the new fiscal year that starts October 1st. We're hearing lots of projections. There really is no solid number that we have to work with, but we are hearing 10%, 20%, even 30% in some circles. Our governmental affairs folks, our strong relationships with legislators, we don't know exactly what that figure will be that we will have to deal with. But our goal, first and foremost, is the safety and security of our staff, we are continuing to encourage and support to work remotely. I'm sorry, not encourage, expecting to work remotely. At the same time, our second priority, beyond the safety and security of our staff and program participants, is job preservation. It takes a long time to rebuild when staff has to be downsized. Our goal is, and again, under Jeff's leadership, our Institute Director's leadership, we're working really hard to create some fluidity in our funding, use our reserve funds, our savings from travel. We have a soft hiring freeze on. We're being very, very slow to fill any positions. All of this is creating some fluidity in our funds that will help us bridge once we know what that next solution needs to be. All of us are taking pay cuts as academic staff. All of us have had our benefits cut. Starting July 1st, our university contribution to our retirements was adjusted from a 10% university contribution to a 5%. Those of us as academic staff on a scaled level have all taken pay cuts. Those will go into effect September 1st. Extension, as a major administrative unit, because of our work with a number of offices across campus, including the provost office, including academic HR, non-academic HR, the general counsel's office, we have the ability to make additional adjustments within our budget to deal with whatever that budget shortfall is going to be. That may mean Extension may need to make additional decisions to get to the budget solution that we need to have. And our goal in all of this is job preservation. That may mean some level of additional budget cuts for those of us at the higher end of the pay scale. We will use a shared sacrifice philosophy in working across the system, but our goal is to not take any budget salary cuts to our lowest paid staff. And that's something that's really important to Jeff, it's important to me, important to our administrative team. We may end up using some furlough days. Again, we've got the option to be creative within the university structure and policies that ultimately we will adhere to. So it's a great question. It's a big question. We feel our sustainability is very, very strong. County governments, as many of you are very aware of, are funded primarily off of property taxes. So the rescission that's happened with private business because of COVID-19 started affecting sales tax immediately. That affects the state coffers immediately. Although we are finding out the state of Michigan is doing a little bit better than originally anticipated. County governments, due to the nature of their funding and operating off of property taxes, we don't fully expect this pandemic and the implications financially to hit county government until fiscal year 2022. Because as it impacts people's personal incomes and their ability to pay their property taxes and counties operating off of property taxes, we expect a more difficult financial year with counties in FY22. Another question, is MSU still supporting 4-H positions or is it up to counties? And can you also address the question about MSUE employees being furloughed? I think I did address the furlough question. We have not furloughed anybody right now as an organization. As in terms of our 4-H positions and it being up to counties, we work on an assessment model with county government. We continue to work on an assessment model with county government. In that assessment, it comes with a base level of staffing for 4-H youth development program coordinators. In fact, we've grown our core of full-time 4-H program coordinators substantially over the last 3 or 4 years. So counties in their assessment pay a base assessment per resident of the county, and that includes our co-investment in 4-H program coordinators. So it is a shared investment with county government. There are counties that purchase additional staff specifically to work in their counties, and we have many counties that do invest for additional 4-H staff. In that case, they pay 80% of that cost, just like our educators. If they would like a full-time educator serving their county, they pay 80% of the salary and fringe benefits costs. We pay 20%, and that allows us to access that educator to be part of statewide delivery teams dependent upon their content area. So your question specifically about 4-H positions, the vast majority of the complete investment in 4-H program coordinators is absolutely funded by county government, but it is a shared investment. The investment in our educators and staff in the Children and Youth Institute that support our 4-H Youth Development Network are paid for centrally on state and federal resources by extension. Great questions. I'll stop there and follow up with any more questions that people might have.
Thank you, Patrick, very much. I just have a couple of other areas that I'd like to cover briefly before we close and take time for questions, which Megan will help moderate. First, I want to share with you what we shared with our entire staff at MSU Extension on our all-staff webinar just yesterday afternoon, so that you know what our go-forward posture will be. First, as Patrick already mentioned, we will continue to ask our people to work from home whenever and wherever possible. However, in that context, we will continue to work with Patrick and the district directors for people to be in county offices when that's needed and possible. And we will also continue to use the travel waiver process as we have been doing to get people out into the field and to other environments that they may need to be in person. And we feel very good about that. In terms of programming, for youth programming until further notice, all youth programming will continue to be online. We feel pretty strongly that we remain in a place where things are just changing too quickly. As many of you know, in Michigan, many schools, public school systems have determined that they're going to be online at least at the beginning of the year, and more are making these choices as the days go by. And we just feel as though it's the prudent thing for all health and safety reasons to have all of our children and youth activities remain online. For our adult programming, give me a chance to go through the couple of parts of this. So in most cases, all of our adult programming will continue to be online until further notice. However, we've developed a fairly stringent process for exceptions in two areas. One, we have a process in place that we can ultimately get to a point of considering approval of meetings of adults of no more than 10, which, by the way, includes our own staff. And it's a sequential process that people will go through in making those requests, and that process will go through our institute leaders and eventually make its way to Patrick and I. In addition, under the essential services exceptions that the state has had in place almost since the beginning, we will also permit through October the opportunity to request an exception for meetings of adults up to 25 outside, again, under a series of quite stringent expectations. And so the bottom line is all youth events online, most adult events will be online with these two exception possibilities. We've also made it very clear to our staff, and we reminded them of yesterday, 2 weeks ago now, President Stanley published the MSU Community Compact, and that lays out some clear expectations regarding wearing face masks, regarding social distancing and other social hygiene measures. It makes it clear that these are expectations, they're not suggestions. And we've made it clear to our staff that the failure to adhere to the MSU Community Compact could lead to the revocation of travel waivers, exceptions for meetings, and as the compact points out, it can also be an HR issue if there are repeated instances. And finally, I want to share with you that we are going to, and we will be putting this, I'd ask you to keep this to yourself for now, but this will go out on 4-H Online by Thursday in an email from me and Dr. Jake DeDecker, the state 4-H leader, that we are going to pause for the coming fiscal year the collection of 4-H participation fees. We think this is an important thing to do in the current climate. We think this is an important thing to do because of the broader range of audiences we're already trying to reach. And just a little inside baseball, since all of you are inside baseball in this sense, interesting anomaly because of the way MSU Extension has historically collected and then made use of these participation fees, that this actually will not mean that we are out this funding in fiscal 21. Because in fiscal 21, we would be normally spending the funding collected in fiscal 20. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. And then over the course of the next few months, we will consider whether to reinstitute 4-H participation fees or whether we have other means to fill that gap. So again, we think this is an important message for a whole variety of reasons, and we're looking forward to really evaluating the impact of this pause in participation fees. And so, you know, since I mentioned these fees, one important mechanism perhaps for helping out with the absence of these fees is through philanthropy, and that's where I'd briefly like to turn now. As most of you know, Bridget Paff joined Extension 3 years ago as our first ever Director of Development. At the same time, we brought Amanda Masters on board from the 4-H Foundation. I'm pleased to tell you that this past fiscal year, our fundraising efforts resulted in over $1.8 million in philanthropic support. This is great news for Extension, but I know we can do more. And as Patrick shared, the financial situation that we currently face in counties at the state and in other areas is extremely serious, and philanthropy is a critical component to helping with our long-term financial stability. I know that several of you have had some initial conversations with Bridget or Amanda about how you might support MSU Extension with your own charitable giving. We thank you for that and encourage each of you to consider what you might like to do. Bridget and Amanda and the team of development staff they work with are excellent at helping people do things like provide for college education for their grandchildren or supplementing their own retirement income, while at the same time providing for programs that are truly meaningful. I ask each of you to take Bridget or Amanda's calls when they reach out to you and explore with them how you might be able to support MSU Extension in the future. Thank you all very, very much for joining us today. Thank you for listening to myself and Patrick for the last 45 minutes. And I think we'd like to open up the remaining time to questions. And Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
While we're waiting, Jeff, can I butt in for a second?
Of course.
Thanks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Beth Stever. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for MSU Extension. Jeff mentioned it about the participation fees for 4-H, but I don't believe he mentioned about the moratorium on face-to-face, that information has not been shared with our 4-H community yet. That will be shared by Thursday. And I just wanted to mention it because if you are a 4-H parent, grandparent, volunteer, or know any, if you could please work with us and keep that confidential until you see it announced on 4-H Online, we would sure appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Beth.
I think that we can go ahead and close things out. Bridget or Jeff, however you'd like to do that. At this point, we don't have any other questions.
All right, thank you all for joining us. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you got the information you were looking for. And we will follow up with a link to the recording and additional information. And as always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.